Hi, this is your coach JDP, and you are excellent. You are excellent is all about bringing mentoring and coaching to underestimated people from under-resourced zip codes so that they can find entry, acceptance, belonging, permanence, growth, and success in the career of their choosing. We seek to demystify and uncover mentoring and coaching so that you can leverage these resources to enhance your career and your life. Today, I have the immense pleasure of speaking to someone, again, she's awesome. Uh, Rachel Kimber. She's a nonprofit executive and get this, a technology futurist. So this is right up my alley. She's managing director of Full Circle Impact Solutions. And so what do they do? And I'm going to ask her in a minute, but they leverage they leverage their experience to generate impact efficiently. They collaborate with teams to create strategies and develop processes and innovative solutions that promote a more sustainable and effective sector. That was a mouthful, but I'm going to let her talk to about that. So Rachel, hey, welcome to URXcellent. I'm so excited.
Thank you, JDP. I have a long history in the social sector, and that looks like showing up in the philanthropic spaces where we get to give the money away, showing up in more public charity spaces where we're redistributing funds globally sometimes. And so, what I have decided to do at Full Circle Impact Solutions as a freelance consultant for the space is to really look at people, process, and tools. And so the process piece is a really fun one to start digging into. Is in our space, we talk a lot about, is this equitable? Is this accessible? Is this transparent? And so those values, those words need to get baked into the daily practices, right? Can we actually accept an application from an organization where English isn't a first language, right? That's the equity in a process. That process is run by people and tools. And so what Full Circle does is we come in and we help people look at their process and understand, what does it look like to be inclusive for a neurodivergent audience, right? Let's ask that question. How do we start building that into our grant making process? How do we better meet the needs of our nonprofit partners? And so through working with people, reviewing the process, and this day and age, everything is run on technology, right? You don't get to, shake hands often. You get to have a Zoom meeting more frequently. And so because we run on tools, we need to make sure that those technology tools also facilitate entry, acceptance, belonging, right? JDP, those words that you were talking about, resonates all the way through. And so as a social sector, nonprofit sector, in some regions, the third sector, we really double down on aligning values with our practices. And so that's what my consultancy helps do, is if you value equity and you're not sure if your process is equitable, we can help you look at that and figure it out.
That's amazing. When we were in the as we teed up this conversation, we had a little bit of, I gave you a choice
Yes.
of whether you wanted to talk about being a mentor, a coach, an executive, and you went to mentorship, and that's really important because that's sort of like an entry point for my viewers into the larger world of, especially when they go into their careers. So I want to start with this first question. Okay, you told us about your business. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So my empathy with the values to practice, especially as it applies to technology, like those seem light years apart. I studied cognitive science as an undergraduate. Also sounds like a mouthful. It's basically like psychology and computer science slammed into one major.
Yeah.
And so the people part of my journey was really important. I was raised by a social worker. The world is run by humans. And if those humans are making erratic decisions that don't align with computers that make ones and zero decisions, right? It's either on or off. We need to figure out how we're working together. And so my background has really emphasized, how do we not just prioritize transaction, right? Thinking, money in, money out, transaction. Here's the contract, here's your goods. It's about relationship. How do we bring relationship to our sector in a way that the for-profit sector doesn't need to think about it as much, right? They're really based on transaction. Nonprofits in the social sector are a lot more about how are we relating to each other. And for me, it gets really exciting when we start looking at the tools, right? So that's my cognitive science background, is spanning the very human decision making and behaviors, belonging and acceptance, and what does that look like, all the way up to how are the tools that we're partnering with,
Mm.
AI, right? Ethical bias and all of these things that we need to be looking at in our AI tools are things that, again, driven by humans, created by humans. And we need to figure out how those tools are either helping us move forward or not. That all sounds really, really meta. And so I want to ground it in, what does that look like in the day to day? It looks like talking to people and helping them get comfortable with some of these really dense data and technology conversations, because everything we do this day and age, it's based on a data input through a technology tool. And in
Mm.
order to make sure relationship doesn't get lost in there, I love mentoring people to understand data, mentoring folks to engage with technology in ways that they didn't before, mentoring folks to get in touch with, like, what makes you buzz? What makes you hum? What do you get excited about? Because I've had the privilege of knowing for a while, right? It's people and tools. Both of those things make me feel like I am doing good for this planet. And so it's exciting for me to help folks figure out, what does that look like for you? There's probably a data component, there's probably a technology component. Can I help you get comfortable with those pieces?
So let's look at that mix, right? Because for me, when I was growing up, right, I was a space nerd and aerospace, planes, trains, automobiles, rockets. If it involved one of those things, I was all about it, right? But
Yeah.
then, um, when I went to school, I majored in what I knew would feed me,
Hmm.
technology, and
Right.
minored in what would feed my soul, right? Literature, religion, etc. So this is how an interesting mix. How did you come to that psychological and technological road? What was that? How did you merge those things
Yeah,
together to
here's
you?
another fun layer, right? We are where we come from. We can't get away from it. We are where we come from. And my mom is a social worker.
Mm,
And so for me, I saw what that looked like. That is hard work. That is heavy heart work. And I didn't think that I had skin thick enough to be able to endure that type of a journey. But I still cared a lot about people. And so by finding a major that gave me the space to do both of those things, right? I didn't want to be a pure scientist. I understood that science is only as good as the people, right? So like that dichotomy within me started with having a social work mom and seeing what the potential was when humans can show up as their best selves, as
mm.
they can, drop some of the baggage that we all carry, that we can remember the good from where we came from and be like, yeah, there was some shit too. And I'm not going to carry that with me for the rest of my life. And so having the privilege of, 20 years under my mom's tutelage, I really got to see what happens when people belong. What happens when people get to show up as the best version of themselves? What happens if we're given space to thrive instead of told we have to be accountable? It's just a total shift in the innovative, the creativity, and the access to who we are as humans when we're given that space.
Did you? We talked about you mentoring and coaching, and you actually mentioned that. How did you come to mentoring and coaching? Your mom, God bless, is she still with us?
Oh, she is. She is.
Ah.
And she's still mentoring and coaching. Like all the time, everyone in my community, I'm like, go have a chat with her. She's got some good words for you.
Well, hey, mom,
Yeah.
happy belated Mother's Day, because this is being taped
Oh,
the day after Mother's Day, and happy Mother's Day to you, by the way.
thank you.
Um, so mentor, did you given your exposure to someone who's in the social work profession, did that have a very heavy influence on your being a mentoring and coach? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Oh gosh, I love the question, JDP, because I don't think I've ever reflected on that connection, but absolutely. I grew up watching her mentor. So Dr. Fraser, she's a professor of social work in addition to a practicing therapist. And so Dr. Fraser was constantly bringing people under her wing, right? And helping them see the ecosystem or get the resources that they didn't have access to. And we were poor. We grew up poor. She was a single mom in the 80s with 3 kids. Like, poor was just kind of a given, right?
Sure.
So to watch her, be so selfless and generous and not worry about how the ROI was going to line up, right? It was never a thought about ROI. And so that's how I
Mm,
find myself now in an impact generating sector. That's what we're here to do. We're here to take, the kid that got out of prison and doesn't know what he's going to do with his life and put him in college and say, here's your chance, here's your shot. And so I think it was really powerful to watch her do that time and time again, and so selflessly.
right.
We had college students living with us at times. We had, bags of clothes that we would make sure got to the community members that needed it when it was time for us to, pass things on. And so I think for me, it started really in the fabric of where I'm from and who I am. And so when I entered the professional world and learned the word mentoring, and there were mentoring programs, like it was this formal structure, um, I don't think I realized that there was formal structure around it until then. For me, it was just
Mm,
you pull the people up behind you. You share the knowledge that you've gained. You share the resources that you have. And to this day, I live in a very socioeconomic diverse neighborhood on purpose, because living adjacent to wealth was really important for me growing up, right? I had resources and access that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so now, being someone who's, comfortably middle class, to live next door to people who are literally just off the plane from Ecuador and sending their kids to the same school that my children go to, they're learning mentorship, right?
mm,
My children are already learning, what does it look like to show up for your friends? What does it look like to share generously of whatever your skills and talents are?
mm.
And to me, that's mentorship. It's just generously sharing whatever it is that you have to share with the world.
Yeah, and it's also cultural diversity, right? Because, like you said, here we are, in America, assimilated to the culture, being able to speak to the
Mhm.
tribe, as it were,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And now living next door to someone who's just recently arrived from Ecuador, right? Now we have to sort of expand our horizon, expand that who we are, to be open to, hey, uh, maybe I have to, in order to better communicate, learn a couple of words in Spanish, or
Yes.
maybe, um, uh, in my case,
Mhm.
right, being from Puerto Rico and coming to America and etc., um, having issues with even expressing myself,
Yes.
making friends,
Yes.
and everything that goes along with it in terms of cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, etc., that we find ourselves in.
Yes. JDP, I'd love to hear how you came to mentorship also. I don't know if anyone on the air asked you that, but I would love to hear the answer. And then I think, it's just really interesting to be able to explore, like, how did we find this calling? Like, why do it? And for me, as you're saying, like, it's an expansion of myself, and that helps me learn and grow. But it's like really meeting other people where they are too, right? So
Yeah.
there's like just this beautiful visual of, like this expansive stretching and like connecting with each other in a way that you wouldn't bother otherwise. But you're like, oh, I know how to do this thing, and you don't. Like, let me stretch that direction. Oh, you speak Spanish and you want to teach me a couple words. Cool. Let me stretch in that direction. And it
Mhm.
just, all of a sudden, you're like, and now I'm thinking in visuals of trees, right? You're this big, beautiful, community member, right? Expanding, stretching, shading your grove. And you didn't really have to put any effort to get there. You just kind of stretched a little bit. You met people where they were and shared what you had to give. And all of a sudden, you're like a really central community member, right? Think of the grove of trees, and you're one of those big, important trees that's providing so much to that ecosystem. So, JDP, you're one of those people. So, how did you become this beautiful tree in the forest that is, shading and providing and supporting in ways that you probably never expected?
Um, what I find fascinating is that people that I gravitate to, we sort of, there's that intersectionality of experience that we have, right? So, single mother, my mom's single mother, 5 kids, in Brooklyn back in the 60s and the 70s. Yes, I'm that old. Yes.
We've aged so well, though.
Yes, girl. So, I saw her struggles, right? And her in later in life, my mother always had a mindset of service. whether that was in the church, whether that was with the Red Cross. She, as a matter of fact, worked with the Red Cross as a volunteer for many, many years.
Mm.
And seeing how her, and when we were raised in a neighborhood such that everybody was poor, so we didn't even know we were poor,
Right.
and she did the best to provide for us the way she could. So when she uprooted us from Brooklyn down to Puerto Rico, I was probably like 11 or 12 or something like that, going into that whole culture shock, right? Not speaking the language and everything else. I had people on the ground there through school and the church or whatever, and who kind of said, "Hey, you might be feeling a certain way, but we got you."
Mm.
And I, having my mom be a person of service and faith, and having these people that supported me on my journey, when I got to a certain station in life, I wanted to be able to pay that back. Right. And it
Yes.
was a very natural fit for me to do so. Right. I would see someone in their career who was maybe having a little bit of a struggle, and I'm like, "Hey, let's sit down, let's talk. What's going on?" And um, just in mutual support situations, and then progressing through my career to mentorship.
Yes.
Yeah.
And JDP, I remember the first time I was called to formally mentor, and I was like, me? You mean me? Right? It was one of those moments like, I don't know how to mentor. Like, why are you asking me? And then realizing like it's just putting a label on something that we do every day,
Sure.
right? On something that we show up and share all the time. And so I think it's intimidating the first time you're called to do it, like in a program or, in service in a very, formalized,
Yeah.
structured program. It's so rewarding though. It's so rewarding. And one of the stories I wanted to share is I just recently had a mentee. I was the mentor, a mentee who we went through this beautiful quarter together, shared a lot of knowledge with him about what is the nonprofit ecosystem, what is philanthropy, like how does all of this work, because it's really niche and it's really exclusive, right? It's one of those places, if you don't have someone who knows, you need to know. And so it was fantastic to share all of that knowledge with him. And then I moved into a different space, right? We were separated. He had a wonderful time. Favorite quote was, she taught me not to be scared about data, and that data is everywhere, right? And so I will leave that to your listeners also. Like, data is you checking the weather and deciding what to wear, right? It's not this scary, like, AI algorithm must handle it. No, we work with data all the time. What I don't work with very well is video editing. And so he happens to have video editing skills. And I was like, hey, mentee, guess what? The script just got flipped and I need some help. Can you help me out? And so that's where, for me, like, mentoring is so mutually and ecosystemly beneficial, because you're learning, like, who has skills that I need or want to learn from? What can I share that I didn't realize was worth sharing? And so it's, again, like that enriching of our own ecosystem. And I think that's why the tree analogy came, is I may be the tree, but I got to support the birds, right? There's people out there doing their little bird thing, and I want to make sure that they feel good doing their bird thing. And all I have to do is be a tree, right? I don't have to figure out how to fly. That's not my job, right? That's not what I was put on this planet to do. But in reciprocity, we're so much richer. We're so much richer. And I don't think we value that enough in this culture. There's a lot of talk about ROI or treasure. And it's like, no, there's talent, there's time. Those things are also very, very valuable.
Rachel, do you feel that you hit on something really important there, that what we value as a culture, where where I come from, Puerto Rico, and I can speak broadly across Latin America, we value the family. We value, faith, and we value community, right? So those are all anchored in human interaction, right?
Yes.
And mutual understanding, respect. And I might not agree with you, but there's often not used anymore word of tolerance,
Hmm.
right? I might not agree with you, but I'm going to respect you enough to respect that you have an opinion and I have mine.
Yep.
Do you feel that that's something that as a culture we're moving away from, or and if so, do you feel is impacting that ability?
So I love going meta, and that means that I listen to like a lot of different things across a lot of different radio stations, if you will. I listened to a podcast recently about financial giving in New Zealand. There's not a lot of incentive to do that in New Zealand. Here, we have like a tax incentive. Like the government is literally incentivizing us to write checks for charitable purposes. That's why the billionaires have philanthropies, right? So we are incentivized to do this. And so we're actually pretty good at financial giving, right?
Mm.
Most of us write a check to some nonprofit organization throughout a 12-month period. What we don't do is show up to volunteer. What we don't do is figure out how do we share our talents, right? So like that extra lift. And then, the checks are also reducing, right? They're getting smaller. Those of us in the middle class and below have less to go around. And so I think there are some real pressures on us. I don't think we're doing a terrible job. And then I will just share that the next generation that I have the privilege of raising two of those members, the values that I'm teaching are kind, generous, and respectful,
Mhm.
right? So if you can show up with respect, that should be followed by kind, right? There's no need to say anything nasty, right? We're
Sure.
respecting each other. We're coming with kindness.
Sure. It's like
And then
my mom used to say, if you don't have anything positive to say, don't say anything at all.
exactly. And then the generosity, right? If you have it to give, if you can hold back, your opinion and point of view about, whatever it is, you can still be generous. There's
Sure.
no reason that you can't. Here's a pile of books, right? Go read up. Maybe you'll have a different way to think about this next time. And not necessarily with the intent of changing minds, but just again, sharing time, talent, treasure. These are the things that we can put out there. The We Give Summit just had a wonderful synopsis of 5 different T's. I don't remember exactly what they were, but time, treasure, talent, and there were 2 others. And so Google it, let's find out what those were, and let's start leaning into that because it's so much more than just writing a check. And I think the United States is pretty good at writing checks. It's those other
Yeah.
places where we need to lean in.
Yeah, one of the experiences I had as a volunteer soccer coach. Again, I'm the dad. I'm a girl dad. I have 3 girls. Well,
Yes.
they're all grown now, and the oldest one is married. The middle one is a nurse living with us, and she is a specialist in OR and wound care and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oof.
And then the youngest one is engaged and will be married this summer.
Mm.
And they are very special people, but again, instilling those values, right? What is important for you as to function as a human being?
Mm-hmm.
I remember when my girls were small, we have a local soccer program, and I was, of course, rah, I'm going to be that dad all up in their
Yes.
business, and I'm going to be coaching soccer, not knowing what the hell I was doing at the time, but I
Oh
learned.
gosh, yeah.
But I noticed that when in school functions and everything else, you talk about, the check versus the presence. I noticed that the checks would flow in, right? Oh, how can I just write a check? Well, no, we really want you to be here to
Right.
support your kid in
Right.
this game. So, and oftentimes I think that, we're the intention is good. The execution might be lacking.
Yes, I agree. And I think the pandemic broke it even further. Being a mom of young kids, he was entering pre-K when the pandemic hit. So my whole elementary school experience was shaped by the pandemic. I was on the PTO during the pandemic as a single mom with 2 children. It was absolutely bonkers. I said yes because no one else was saying yes. But now when I meet new members of my community, I'm like, either write that check and or volunteer. So, if you can't do both, I get it, but please make sure you're showing up because again, it's a really diverse community. Not everybody has the privilege of time or treasure.
True.
And that means we need to help balance out that equation. So I think, yes, there are ways to show up even if you can't in your head, right? Like the can't. And then the other place I went to when I was the single mom on the PTO, I was like, who doesn't have one Saturday a quarter? Who can't walk one Saturday a quarter to show up and be a part of this school community? So that's also like, how do you get the ask small enough that it feels manageable? And I think that's probably rather challenging for the nonprofits who have real need. And then you have to hire a volunteer coordinator, right? Like, where are we shifting that burden to now manage and maintain, the support that we need? It requires someone internal to navigate all that.
So is this then a communication of a common set of values, right? That people need to sort of understand, like you said, presence or treasure, right? Be there
Yes.
or write a check, or if you can, do both.
Yes.
How important are that having common values for us as humans and forget about the planetary scale, but just in our local community?
Yeah, no, I think aligned values are incredibly important. And I actually, don't get me on my pulpit, but I will go out and
Oh, get on that
preach
pulpit.
at some of my local parties, right? Where like the new transplants are here and we're all having a barbecue, is I'll go and suss them out and I'll say, this is a really special community. And I've
Mm,
watched lots of people move. I've watched lots of people go to the privileged neighborhoods because they didn't really understand what's socioeconomic and diverse and, all the cultures mixing pot kind of, they didn't get it. They didn't understand what that meant. And so I was like, okay, bye. Like, if you don't align around these values, then I don't know if this is the community for you. And I'm
mm,
very protective of that. So I think it is important. I think that's how we build relationship and that's how we build community, is coming around a common set of values. And I know you said we don't have to go, all the way up here, but I think it does apply at the sector level. And so the
mm,
nonprofit sector prioritizes relationship and impact over ROI and profit and transaction, right? Here's the contract. This is what it says. I think we get so much more done just by saying, handshake and, let's figure this out. And I think that's the beauty of the social sector. My concern, though, is when those two sectors start transacting together, is that they
mm.
don't have aligned values. And that's where we see some of the friction. So when a for-profit technology vendor comes in and says, we built this thing, buy it. And the nonprofit sector is like, but it doesn't meet our needs. It's not addressing our use cases. Our
Mm.
values are not transactional. Our values are relational. And this tool is purely transactional. So that's where I think, yes, the values alignment is everything. And if you can't get to all 5 values aligning, at least one of those, right? At least one of those should overlap enough that you can get behind that and then say, okay, the other 4, we don't quite agree, but let's keep driving this forward and see where we can get to.
When we look at our communities, right, and with the lens of mentor,
Mm,
for those that we are mentoring, we talk about values, right, which are is the foundation of
hmm
who we are, right?
Yeah.
And values in my process allow us to stand in what we like to call it our authority, what it
Yes.
is that we know, of which we are certain.
Yes.
And when we look at a group dynamic, then we're looking at goal setting. How do we align people towards a common goal, specifically in nonprofit? Right, I have worked with my former company, with nonprofits, both large and small,
hmm
domestic and international. And
Yes.
one of the keys is goal setting,
hmm
having that North Star. How important is that?
Oh, I completely agree. I think when that vision is clear, when that's where we're trying to get to, and I talk about it as a why and a how, right? If everyone understands why, we need to get there because there are hungry children. We need to get there because there's a global outbreak. We need to get there because poverty in our community is not acceptable, right? We need to make sure that our folks are taken care of. So once we understand that's where we need to get to, we can figure out how. And that's where we bring our skills, right? How do we get there? Okay, well, I don't have an engineer or a data scientist on staff. Can I find someone in the for-profit world who can just come and crunch some numbers for me? And then I can take it back to my nonprofit ecosystem where we value trust and transparency,
Mhm.
right? And so being able to kind of, that's where the values alignment doesn't have to be perfect. It's understanding, where are we going? Why are we going there? For us in the social sector, to impact as many people as we can in a positive way. In the for-profit sector, it tends to be ROI, right? Like, how do we get that money churning through? If we can figure out, and this is a really technology-based example, if we can figure out how to align around something like trust, right? Your values are profitability, market cuts, whatever it is on the for-profit side, we align on this trust thing. And then on the nonprofit side, we're all about relationships and transparency. Cool. If we can align on trust, And if we can build tools that facilitate that, that's going to benefit both sides of the equation. And so that's where, yes, the values are everything, but it doesn't mean that all of our values have to be identical. It doesn't mean we all have to be, showing up in the same way. The how can vary widely. But if we're all focused on that same North Star, we want to feed the children. We just want to make sure there are no starving children in this community. We can get there, we can figure it out, and we can use all of the tools that we bring, for-profit, nonprofit, public money, private money. We can solve that problem. But unless we have that aligned singular value, right? The trust, or we prioritize clear communication, or everything must be done with kindness, right? Whatever that is, we have to come around that singular vision so that the community understands where we're going, why we're going there, and then we can all bring our best how.
So for underestimated people from under-resourced zip codes then, right, who are oftentimes tap into these nonprofit resources from at one point or another. I know I have, and I benefited on occasion and have contributed as well later in life. For potential mentees who are seeking mentors, is the nonprofit sector replete with mentorship programs that one can leverage?
There are so many programs. A lot of them, I feel, are a little barricaded by applications, right? You have to apply to get into the fellowship, to get the resource
firewall.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of excited. What is AI going to do to that, right? You take your LinkedIn profile, you take the program, you put it together. Oh, cool. You're a good fit, right? There's less of that song and dance, because I'm really big about where are we pushing the burden, right? It's not a big burden to set up the application. It's a really heavy lift to fill it out. And who's getting stuck filling it out? The people who need the resources, the people who need the help, right? So how do we start to mitigate that? So I think that there are ample resources. It's, again, that problem of access, which we're trying to solve. Like, how do we solve that problem? And so I think there are formal programs, but I think especially in the nonprofit sector, I have not had any problems ever just asking someone on LinkedIn, you seem to be talking about this topic, DEI demographic data. Could you just give me like 30 minutes of your time so I can understand what that is? Nobody said no, right? It might take a while to get it scheduled. We might have to juggle the calendars a little bit. Nobody has said no. And so I think in our sector, the onus is just the ask, right? This is what I need. I need help with this. I don't know how to do this. I need support. Sometimes things will reciprocate, right? Sometimes it'll come back to you and your video editor mentee is now mentoring you on video editing, right? Like, you never know how it's going to shake out. But that's where, if anyone ever wants to know about philanthropy, for example, I'm like, I could talk about it with my eyes closed, schooling children, working on 18 other things, because it's so easy. But someone else who doesn't have that knowledge, all you have to do is ask. All you have to do is ask, and I can download it in 30 minutes.
It's sort of like that thing, and it reminds me of a quote that Michael Jordan has. He's like, if he got so good because he was so bad, right? He didn't make every shot, and you never know how good you're going to be until you take that shot, until you make the ask.
Yes.
And I think that is something that, again, is a point that I want to drive home to my viewers. Ain't no shame in the asking game.
No shame. No shame.
So if I'm a mentee and I'm structuring the ask, and I actually asked you to be on this pod.
Yep.
And how should then I approach the ask?
Well, I think we asked each other, right? Like, I had an ask for something else, right? I was like, hey, do you happen to know anyone who X, Y, and Z? And you were like, I'll think on that. Would you like to be on the pod? I was like, sure, why not? Right? Like, it's just a chunk of my time. I've got it to give, no problem. So I think framing the ask is being your most authentic self, right? Like, what is your need? What is your interest? Are you just bothering me to bother me because you have nothing else to do today? No, you're asking me because you're trying to launch your own nonprofit and you have no idea how to get registered. Cool. I can give you 30 minutes of my time to help you launch something that's probably going to impact, right? And so that's always it for me. It's the impact calculation. If I can spend 30 minutes with you and you're going to go do some good in the world, God bless. Like, I've got the 30 minutes to give. If we're just doing this are you trying to sell me something? Are you trying to No, that's not the game I play.
Yeah.
And so I think when people see that, when folks in our sector understand, I want to learn something, right? Again, the why, and then how. I think you are going to help me understand X, Y, and Z. This is where I'm trying to get to, and I think you can help in this way. So that's how I would frame the ask. That was a very long answer to a very short answer.
No, hey, it's taking me everything not to do this.
Yeah. And that's it. I think everybody should realize that there is just so much expertise in this world. And if you don't ask, sure, you can start at zero and get yourself all the way up there. But for me, every time I'm learning something new, I'm like, how can I shorten my learning curve? How can I find someone who's a couple steps ahead of me so they can bring me along? I don't want to waste my time going from 0 to 3 if I can start off at 9 or 10.
So what we're saying here then is there's no ask, right?
Ask.
It's okay.
Yes.
Just know what you're after, know what you're going for, and know what your plan is. Because again, if
Yes.
it's a transactional ask, that's a turnoff.
Yes.
Right? Steve Harvey had a quote. He's like, if you ask me for something, I'm going to say no. If you ask me for knowledge, I got all the time in the world for you.
That's exactly it. Yes. And then the other piece I'll follow up is just ask. And there are no dumb questions, right? Either
Amen.
you don't know it or you don't really want to learn it, right? Video editing, I'm pretty sure half of your audience knows how to do that. I have no interest, right? There's a million other things that I want to put my time, energy, and talent into. It's just not one of them. And so that's why there are no dumb questions. You don't want to learn it. You don't aspire to become an expert in it. You just need a little bit of like nudge in the right direction. There are no dumb questions. So when you put that ask out there, know why you're asking it, what you're going to do with it, and know that failure, right? Asking a question where folks are like, you're really asking that? It's okay. It's okay, because that's all part of the journey. And the reason I said failure, it's like you can frame it as a failure. There are no failures. They're all learning opportunities. And I think that the dumbest thing you do is not learn from those moments, right? We all fail. We all fall down. It's human.
We all miss the shot. We all miss a shot. We don't make 100% of the shots.
Exactly. But if you don't learn, that's on you. If you don't take a minute and reflect about what went wrong and what I can do differently next time, then you're kind of, at that point, you're digging your own hole.
So it's being brave, having a sense of humility. And one word that we often don't hear these days is act with respect and kindness.
All the time.
Right?
All the time. Oh gosh, between the children, I'm like, was that kind? Did you need to do that? Was that a kind behavior? There's just no reason to exist on this planet in a state that is unkind. We all carry enough hurt and enough trauma. We all listen to the news. We know what is happening. Can we just show up with kindness and give each other space and grace when we all have those moments where we can't, right? But as much as we can, like, lead with kindness, lead with generosity, and lead with respect.
I love it. Rachel, how are you doing? Was this the conversation you were expecting?
This was fantastic. This was wonderful. I think, JDP, you're doing incredible things for a community of folks who otherwise wouldn't have access. And I think that is a high calling. And I hope the folks that are listening and learning with you are sharing back where they're going and what they're doing. Because for me, there is nothing more beautiful than a feedback loop where you find out, wow, that really landed, and this is what I went and did with it.
So if you're watching this, drop a comment. Let me know how I'm doing. You know, Rachel, I have asked you a number of questions, and we've gone in really interesting directions. And quite frankly, I knew that I was in for a ride. So I want to thank you. But I don't think the questions that I've asked quite uncover the depths of who you are as a person. So Rachel, I'm going to ask you, are you up to take the Get to Know a Mentor questionnaire?
Absolutely. No hesitation.
Okay, here we go. This is the Get to Know a Mentor questionnaire. Question number 1, favorite sport?
Soccer?
Oh,
I'm like, to play or to watch, but soccer came out first, so we'll go with that.
Football, as we call it.
Football, exactly.
That's awesome. All right. Second question, and this has been added to. Cats, dogs, or reptiles?
Oh gosh, dogs. I
Dogs.
say that and I have two cats. So I'm an anomaly. I'm an anomaly wrapped in an anomaly, right? Dogs are, I mean, who doesn't need that kind of love in their life, right? They are just, drooling, slobbering, happy creatures. We all need a little bit of that.
Yeah, I am in a mixed marriage. We have a dog, two cats. I am a Knicks fan, and she is a Celtics fan. So
Oh
yeah,
gosh. Oof, good
so
luck. Good luck.
and these two teams are on a collision course this
Oof.
season.
Mm.
Okay. Next question: mountains or beach/ocean?
I love it when the two of them are right next to each other. So New Zealand is one of my favorite places to be. Mountains though. I think the mountains are more important for me, hence my, the tree analogies.
Awesome. And this next question has caused some confusion, some controversy.
Woohoo.
So buckle up. Here we go. Regardless of genre, medium, style, geography, favorite artist?
Oh gosh. Oh, this is a really hard one. Lauryn Hill. Lauryn
Lauryn Hill.
Hill.
Oh, killing me softly.
And the Miseducation album. Like
Yeah.
if you can listen to
Oh,
that,
yes, girl.
you are killing me softly. That album. And
That
I
album.
started listening to it as a younger person, right? Coming into myself. And I listened to it now and I'm like, how did she know? How did she
Yeah.
know? Right. So that's what
She-
Lauryn Hill does for me.
She got a lot of hardware. I think 7 Grammys or some crazy number like that off
Yeah.
that one album. Yeah, I
Yes,
remember.
yes.
Absolutely.
And then again, I'm not up with the history. I don't follow the journey of the artist, but I know she got torn apart pretty terribly. And so as we are advising people to step into their greatness, sometimes the world's not ready for it. Sometimes the world doesn't want to hear it. And that's okay. That's okay. Don't not step into your greatness, but just, make sure you got your people close to keep building you up on that journey.
Yeah. I have to say that there's nothing more important than your network, your support system,
Yes.
your inner circle and the concentric rings around it.
Yep.
And the only thing I would say is surround yourself with people that love you and support you, and you
Yes.
will go anywhere.
Yes. And if you
Trust me.
don't have it, start building it. And I will say LinkedIn, again, you find those nonprofit folks, they are there to support, they are there to grow, they are there to help you build that community.
Yeah.
Because it is hard out there if you don't have that. And so, yes, the love, the support, the energy coming back at you in those low times, we all need that.
Okay. Last question. Favorite food or cuisine?
Sushi came really quickly, so I'm just gonna go with that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would eat
sushi.
just about anything. Though. I mean, you put someone prepared food for me and put it in. I will devour it. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, the life of a single mom, right? Anyone who cooks for me, it's great. I don't care what it is.
Oh, Rachel, this has been an absolutely lovely conversation. You are a total delight. I thank you very much for making time for us today. But before you go, do you have any last words for my audience?
And the thing that jumped to mind is just listen and learn, right? Listen to the folks that, you find interesting or inspiring and just gobble it up because life is not meant to be boring. And I think a healthy level of curiosity is what helps balance out any boredom on this planet.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Guys, I will make sure to include Rachel's socials in the description. So please like and subscribe and drop a comment. Let us know if you enjoyed this one. I know I did. Rachel, thank you so much for being here today. This is your coach JDP reminding you that you are excellent. We'll see you next time. Take care.